that reaches into parts of Bartholomew and Decatur County. That warning also in place until 8:15 this evening. So those are two storms that we're watching in the northern part of the viewing area. All of us have the reason to watch in terms of the fact that there is a tornado watch that's in place for everyone, along and west of 65 until 11, east of 65 until 3 a.m. So again, just pointing out that we do have the threat that will continue into the evening hours. Let me mention that with that threat comes not only the threat of tornadoes, but also the threat of large hail and damaging winds. So those are three things we have to really be mindful of as these storms track through. Again, you can see the tornado warning to the north. Let me zoom into that for you, and we'll point out a couple of things that you need to know. First of all, this cluster of storms south of Louisville, growing but not severe. This one is, and you can see in that storm, again, the hail size for this particular one, not all that impressive, but we've had hail up to grapefruit size that has been reported in a few places. Let's look at the velocity on this. We're looking just south of the Seymour area, that couplet trying to show there as this moves across the county line from Jackson into Jennings County, Seymour, Hayden, North Vernon, all in the path of that storm. We are tracking that. Let me go over to Brian Good, who's keeping an eye on some of the traffic cameras up across Indiana. Brian.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, that's that cell that we just got an alert on from the Weather Service saying that, hey, this may be crossing here on I-65 just south and east of Seymour itself. Let me show you. This is one of the camera feeds we have that is right there along 65. Hard to tell. This is a camera still, so this is likely more of US 50, it looks like, and the crosshairs there into parts of 65. It's not the actual interstate itself, but you can tell kind of an ominous look because the sun is actually still getting through on one side of the image, and the other side you can tell obviously the storm is impacting them. With this updating every few moments, we will have just take it minute by minute as we're tracking there into Seymour. No confirmation of a tornado on the ground here into Seymour County. It's just the rotation certainly has been developing there rapidly, and we're just taking it scan by scan. But no doubt, lowest level of your home, away from windows, Jackson and Jennings County in general, that should be the rule. In fact, everyone watching, that should be something you're thinking of now, because at some point we may all be facing warnings like this tonight, Kevin.
Yeah, you're right. This is going to be a long night ahead as we take a look at what's going on across the scope of things. It's why we've deployed the storm tracker earlier in the day. We were going up to the north, up towards Scottsburg, and then we said, you know what, we're concerned a little about the growth of what's happening to our south, so we pushed it back to Bullitt County. We'll continue to watch this. This is having a little trouble exploding or advancing, but that will not be the case all evening long. What's happening in the atmosphere right now is we're sort of starting to see that low-level jet increase that typically happens around or just after sunset. And that's when we expect not only the mid-levels to cool down, but increasing the lift with that jet coming in. That's going to allow for additional development to take place. Obviously, right now, all eyes are on the area to our north, and that is a series of tornado warnings.
And Kevin, we can see now one of the other stills, folks underneath the overpass. They're on I-65. We can show that on Max 2. This is, again, right there into Seymour. So the cars, and a lot of this is just heavy rain, but several people have pulled off to the side. Not the place you want to be, by the way, in a tornado situation, obviously, but I get it. And everyone at the moment probably is not aware of that. They're saying it's heavy rain and there's pulling off. But please, if you don't have to travel at all, just stay home, Kevin.
Yeah, let me show you what this whole wide setup looks like. And you can see the cluster of storms between Indianapolis and Louisville. Those have a number of tornado warnings. Tornadoes actually on the ground doing considerable damage. Additional tornado warnings approaching the Bowling Green area. Debris showing up out near Carbondale, southern Illinois, and then another one in southern Missouri. So we've got a series of storms that will be moving in our direction. As we take a closer view of what's happening to our north, let me just zoom into that because these storms are all intensifying fairly fast. And I'm just going to zoom into that core of storms to the north, noting that we're just north of Louisville. Here's Seymour, greatest rotation rotation on that between Seymour and Crothersville, moving across the county line, just going to move south of North Vernon and Hayden. We go to our velocity where we can see that rotation clearly. And I'm going to use the scope on this, and then we'll look also at the hail, because we have hail in some of these storms as well, and that will intensify too. You can see the greatest rotation now crossing the county line, pushing it just south of Hayden, just south of North Vernon. You should be in your tornado safe place. Where is it? It's the lowest level, away from windows. You've got to be there, as these storms all have had a history of producing tornadoes that have touched down, and especially this one up around the Bloomington area. Tornado emergency has been issued for that storm. These storms continue to show rotation up around Westport, that's Indiana, and then of course the one in our viewing area tightening up even more just south of Hayden and North Vernon. When we look at the hail potential in that storm, let me go back to it, and I'm going to zoom back into it, and then we'll look at the hail on the hail scope. This warning goes until 8:15, so we still have another 30 minutes on the warning, and then to the hail scope we go, and we'll take a closer view of any hail that we may have within that storm. And then Brian will take a look at some of the debris. We'll be able to put some tracks on these storms as well. When we look at the hail potential, obviously we have a number of warnings, and consequently you can see a number of locations where hail could happen. We've seen that quarter to ping pong ball size, but in some of the extreme instances, we've seen upwards of tennis to baseball size hail being reported. The cluster of storms across southern parts of Jefferson County continues to expand. That likely will continue to expand with lightning and heavy rain, now moving across parts of Valley Station up toward Fairdale, Okolona, South Park. All of that region will see some showers and thunderstorms as this continues to develop, and that trend will also produce some heavy rain, which will be a concern of its own as the night goes on. Back to our home view here, and you're going to see a number of tornado warnings to our north. Just north of the viewing area, there are 4 tornado warnings lined up, and then in the northern part of our viewing area, it's Jackson and Jennings County. That's the one that obviously has the most attention given to it from us right now, but obviously we have additional storms still to move through as the rest of the night goes on. Let's track this storm. I'm going to zoom in. You're going to notice that that storm is moving almost out. Not quite yet, but almost out of Jackson County. And Brian's tracking that. We'll put some towns on it. It's just south of Hayden, Brian. This is going to go just north of Hilltown. Likely heavy rain and hail, perhaps, in North Vernon, but the greatest rotation shows up just south of there.
And it looks like there was 2 that I'm able to pick out. One that was very close to Seymour, near Chestnut Ridge area. You see the 2 circulations that were showing up on the radar. And this was about 7:33, so about 10 minutes ago. Notice the one, though, that was just south of Seymour started to fade away, and then the one on the leading edge, this is the current view, is still now the one that is leading the charge. So we zoom in. If there's still a tornado potentially developing here, it's going to be right along County Road. Looks like
500
south. Yeah, just north of that, actually right along it, heading right toward the Grayford area and Walnut Ridge. And again, we don't have any confirmation of anything on the ground, but obviously this is one that continues to cycle and is an environment, absolutely favorable environment for this to be able to touch the ground. So if you are anywhere in Jennings County, but certainly on the south side, North Vernon, you need to make sure you're in a safe spot. This is moving at a pretty good clip. Last check, let me see if we get a speed on this. Coming in at about 50 miles per hour, heading due east at about 50. So it may end up being on the very, again, so the fringes there of North Vernon. Signature not as strong as what it was a second ago, Kevin, but as you see here going back when we have the other scans, I mean, they're definitely cycling through at times, so we can't let our guard down. There's a lot of interaction happening here with these cells. We have like 3 or 4 different cells kind of colliding together, and that's making for a kind of a very messy look and can cause things to change rather quickly.
Yeah, and Brian, while we're on, let's just have this discussion that this is just the beginning of what will be a long evening of storms. In fact, these storms, while they're cellular now, and we have supercells, just like the one we're tracking across parts of Jennings County, moving now out of Jackson County. There are several others to the north and back out to the west, expected to become a little more linear. So there are 2 threats still. We delayed the time because of that morning storm that lingered a little bit longer with clouds and rain. So that pushed this until now, 7, 8 o'clock. But there will be another round of showers and thunderstorms past what we're seeing now, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we knew we're going to have cells into eventual line. Both are dangerous. The cells will contain the largest of the hail. They will contain your tornado threat in a much higher end. The line itself is going to be much more the straight line wind scenario. It's not there yet. These are all supercells. They're just in a bit more of a line back in Illinois, but this is causing damage back in Illinois and southeast Missouri, entering into southwest Indiana. These are the cells we're watching. I know right now in Louisville, Kevin, there's some likely heavy rain and thunder obviously taking place right over the Jefferson Memorial Forest, Shepherdsville, not far from Lebanon Junction, High Grove area.
The storm tracker's in it, so
exactly.
We can see it.
Yeah, there we go. The bottom image there on the bottom right.
Yeah, and that part is not severe yet, but it's still growing, and that's what we've seen on a number of these. And there you see the darkening skies, southern parts of Jefferson County down into northern Bullitt County. That is the storm tracker. We've positioned that to be in that storm as it makes its way and continues to develop. The lone severe storm that we have is the tornado warning, and I'm going to zoom back into that so you'll note that Jackson County is now out of that warning, but Jennings County, you've got to be in your tornado safe place. The lowest level, we mentioned on the last scan of this that it has eased just a bit in terms of seeing not only the appendage and the hook, but when we look at the velocity on this, that's evened out just a bit as well, but it's clearly still there. So if there were to be a tornado, it would be south of US 50, that's south of Hayden, likely to go just south of North Vernon. This is moving off to the east at about 45 to 50 miles an hour. So if we were to put a track on that to see some of the towns that are involved and potentially in the track of this storm, just to give you a few locations, you can see Grayford and San Jacinto. We've got another severe
this is part of the metro, Kevin. While you're going to that, I just want to mention Weather Service said the data that we're getting from a lot of the UPS planes that come in to land have now confirmed the cap is gone, has eroded away.
Okay,
so now the atmosphere is ready to go.
Yeah, and what Brian is talking about is we get the aircraft coming into the city. This is valuable information because we don't launch weather balloons in Louisville, so to see the profile of the atmosphere is super helpful. The cap is a mid-level warm air, and that prevents storms from occurring. But once we erode that mid-level warm air, it can be done by a few things, but it's eroded. And now the storms are free to rise, and we're free to see that convection take place in the form of thunderstorms. So we have the latest thunderstorm. I'm going to pan this out. It's right where you saw the storm tracker. This is a severe thunderstorm warning. It's not a tornado warning, but it has the potential to continue to develop, and we'll watch that along the way. Winds up to 60 miles per hour with that storm. 1-inch hail possible with the storm. If you've been watching us for the last week, we've talked about the alert day. We've also talked about there being multiple threats with these storms. Wind, hail, and tornadoes. And we're seeing that unfold across the area as expected through the evening hours. So now that the cap is gone on the atmosphere, the lid has been removed, and now that we're starting to increase the low-level jet, these thunderstorms will continue to take off and explode.
And Kevin, the wind, I'm looking at the terminal radar, the wind is really ramping up here. This is I-65. I'm not sure where the storm tracker is exactly there in Bullitt County, but this is I-65 near the Brooks exit, right on the southeast side of the Jefferson Memorial Forest. The wind is really ramped up there, traveling just south of the Gene Snyder Freeway. Also ramping up very close to Fort Knox in the Radcliffe area and around, say, West Point. But that surge of winds going up there. Also note the wind increase as well as you head very close to High Grove, getting close to 31 east. So several different pockets here now, Kevin. And again, this is looking at a different radar, but we're able to see some of these finer details, and those finer details matter in this kind of a setup.
Yeah, and while Brian is focused on the metro, we're going to check in. We'll figure out where Logan is. We'll get a live report from him in just a second. I want the folks to know in Jennings County that we are still watching you. This storm to the north is the lone tornado warning that we have. However, it has weakened just a bit. We still see some broad rotation south of North Vernon. That is still staying south of US 50 as that moves off to the north and east. You can see replacing the tornado warning is a severe thunderstorm warning across across Ripley County, Indiana. So that's a good sign. Doesn't mean that it's a solid sign that there will be no additional rotation or no additional tornado possible. But at this point, they've decided to extend that with a severe thunderstorm warning as opposed to keep the tornado warning going. We're still watching it. We still have that broad rotation moving across parts of central Jennings County. The greatest rotation and the greatest wind with that is just south of North Vernon. When we put our radar back on, you're going to notice a couple of things, and I'll just pop the radar on. All of this has happened within the last half hour in our viewing area where we've seen the explosiveness of the atmosphere. We still see some heavy rain. There's not a lot of hail with this storm pushing through. I'm going to go back to our home view across the area and point out that we have additional storms that are developing. One's closer to the river. That's as you work your way across far eastern parts of Jefferson County, Indiana, not far from Carroll County, one along the river in northern Oldham County. The storms here in Louisville that are severe, stretching into Bullitt, a good chunk of Spencer and western Shelby County, and then, of course, the cluster of storms with the tornado warning on that long track supercell moving into Bowling Green. All right, let's go over to Ryan Hoke. What do you have?
Just off the phone with Indiana State Police, they say that a semi-tractor trailer is now overturned on 65 northbound. This is blocking all lanes near Seymour, and it happened right around the time the supercell thunderstorm was moving through. So we don't know the exact cause, but those two things at the same time are probably related here. So we'll continue to monitor for reports. Otherwise, dispatch in Jackson County has no severe weather reports at this time, but it is still early in the game, guys. We're going to still be making some phone calls and checking your reports on social media as well.
All right. Appreciate that, Ryan. Thank you. Again, severe thunderstorm warning covers southern half of Jefferson County. That is for wind and the potential for some small hail. The tornado warning in Jennings County at this point continues as that storm moves fairly fast, 50 miles per hour off to the east, is going to take it out of the county before the expiration time. And that is set for 8:15. And we're just now edging up toward 8 minutes to the hour, top of the hour. So again, I just am pointing out that the rotation is not as great, and that is some good news. It was much tighter when that warning was issued. As we look at the velocity on this, again, we'll go back and forth. Very broad rotation, still seeing some pocket of heavy wind moving through North Vernon. So just because you may not be in the greatest concentration of where we have the rotating winds, there's still strong winds with these storms. And in some cases, there have been some very large hail with these storms, meaning upwards of baseball, and in some cases, even larger hail than that. So a big hail producing event that will eventually come into a big rain making event and wind event as the night unfolds. So for every minute that we go through the evening, we get less of a hail threat, more of a wind threat, and the potential for tornadoes will gradually ease a bit as well. We're not quite to that point yet, though. So we go back to our home view, and I'm going to put the radar on. You're going to notice with the velocity turned on, you can see pockets of heavy wind scattered along that trail. Brian is keeping an eye on the terminal Doppler radar, and Brian, let's take folks through the pockets of heavy wind, not too far from northern Nelson County as these storms stretch down into Nelson, Bullitt, southern Jefferson.
Yeah, this is looking at the wind fields again, where you see those greens indicating where you've got there's like another warning out. Let me see where that is. At Jennings, I think it's Jennings, severe thunderstorm warning to north. We'll come back to that in a second. You can see the wind field. Again, you're looking at really where the brighter colors are in general of each type, whether it's the green or the red. And we noticed the strong pocket of wind that moved along the Snyder Freeway is eased a bit, heading toward Heritage Creek in the Highview area, not far from Okolona, heading to Fern Creek. Now we're seeing another pocket of wind that's been developing in phases. Most of this looks a little more like a straight line downburst signature here in the last couple of scans, but this is very close to Bardstown Road, 31 East. You head into southeast Bullitt County and just north of Cox's Creek. That's where we're seeing some of the strong push of wind. Not to the point of producing any damage we know of at the moment, but those are the pockets I'm watching, as well as a general increase in wind that is moving into the western side of Bullitt County. We have the storm tracker in that area as well, Kevin, so as soon as we're able to, I see Logan's down there as well.
Yeah, let's just bring him in. Yeah. Logan, where are you now and what have you seen? I know you're headed down toward the Cox's Creek area, but just give us a quick update. We'll keep the radar up while we talk to Logan, and he can show us what he sees.
Yeah, guys, so we're out here in Bullitt County, Shepherdsville, and I wanted to point you in that southeast Bullitt County direction. We have it from our roof camera. You can see just how dark the skies are towards that direction. So this is basically what we've been seeing. I believe you guys might have caught that lightning there. We've been seeing a lot of lightning strikes. These really dark clouds coming over. The rain has slowed down where we are in Shepherdsville, but we are, again, what you're looking at on your screen there in our little pocket is towards Cox's Creek. That's where you guys had mentioned you had seen some rotation. So we are going to be heading that way. We're going to be trying to see any damage, any rain that we can find. But as of where we are right now, we're in Shepherdsville. We have seen a little less rain, but we'll send it back to you guys and we'll make our way down towards southeastern Bullitt County, guys.
All right, Logan Perone in the Storm Tracker today. Thank you. Appreciate the reports there. We'll see if anything comes of the severe thunderstorm warning that we have in place until 8:15. Parts of Bullitt, Jefferson, Shelby, and Spencer counties. All of that an indicator that we do have the potential for strong wind with that storm and 1-inch hail. But the real deal would be the wind with that part of the storm. Let me go back to the north. We keep bouncing between areas of concern. Obviously, Metro Louisville has some strong winds pushing through in pockets. Certainly has been tolerable. We haven't received any damage. Ryan is on the phone getting that information. And to the north, we've had the tornado warning. That too has weakened somewhat, both in the intensity and the way it looks. So goes hand in hand. That warning, and there's a number of severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings. And you might be wondering why the severe thunderstorm warning is popping up instead of the tornado warning. And the fact is that's labeled considerable. That's where we have 2-inch hail possible, 60-mile-per-hour winds. So this storm has weakened enough to really just be radar indicated, whereas this one is coming in with some real-time reports of considerable damage possibilities. So that's because of the reports that have come in with it and what the radar sees. So when we look at the velocity on this, I'm just going to show you that the rotation is still very broad at that storm in Jennings County, soon to move over into parts of Ripley County. And as that happens, we'll move that out of our viewing area. But for now, the tornado warning continues technically until 8:15 for Jennings County. That is the only tornado warning we have. The only other severe thunderstorm warning we have happens to be the one that is in the metro, and that includes Louisville, at least the southern half of Jefferson County, and that is where we have the stronger winds pushing through as Brian's been tracking across parts of northern Bullitt County and extreme southern Jefferson County. And I'll zoom into that just a bit. And as we watch those storms, not only are they putting down some rain, there really is the wind that's been problematic. And it's not consistent wind, it's pushes of wind. And you might get just a real quick gust of wind that can cause some quick problems, and then that's it. And we see that from the Jefferson Memorial Forest all the way up to Okolona, stretching south of 265 over toward Tyler Lane.
Yeah, it looks more like a straight line wind downburst scenario is what it looks like.
Yeah, why don't you show it on your radar, Brian, because you were just looking at some of that data that's coming in. And really, it's right across northern parts of Bullitt County.
Yeah, there were two areas where pockets of wind seemed to burst out. One right into this area, southeast Jefferson County, moving right into northern fringes there of Nelson and southwest of Spencer County there, southwest sections of Spencer County, not far from Taylorsville Lake. The other pocket of wind that was likely a downburst scenario was near the Snyder in southern Jefferson County. That wind has now moved into J-Town. We even got a tree down here in downtown Louisville near the station just from the wind gusts we've had moving through the area. I think the airport's now at 37 miles per hour, and that's even really behind majority of the storms that already moved through the area. So it's these little pockets of wind that we're going to be watching. This is a radar that we're able to have access to out of Mount Washington. So it's a little different look to it, but it does see some of those stronger wind gusts that we can get within the metro sometimes. So I'll keep an eye on that as these continue to evolve to the east-southeast.
All right, Brian, thanks. Keeping an eye on everything here in Louisville. I want to take you downtown near the Francescan Kitchen. This is where we have a tree that's been down. You can see some of the police tape up. Cops are on the scene. They're saying, hey, you can't drive through here. We've got a little bit of a problem going on. So we do have, even without the rain downtown, we've had a tree that's now down. So a quick burst of wind in places. You'll notice the wind gust at the airport hit 37 miles per hour. That wasn't too far away from where we're seeing these images come in where we have the tree trees down here in Louisville. The storm tracker is making its way down into parts of Nelson County, where we have storms moving through near the Cox's Creek area, and that's where we've seen some strong winds. The tornado warning to our north, no, we're not ignoring southern Indiana. We've been rotating through all of the storms that we have. This storm has been a weaker storm and in that weakening mode, but you'll notice it does have a little bit of a hook still on it, so it bears continuing to watch. And when we look at that velocity, I think you're going to see we still have a little bit of rotation. Again, still south of North Vernon. It's going to go south of Nebraska, just north of DuPont. DuPont is located in northern Jefferson County, Indiana, so getting so close to that warning, but it is firmly in Jennings County, and that warning has not extended over into Ripley County. So Johnson and Rexville, while you're under the severe thunderstorm warning, no tornado warning just yet. Should this tighten up a little more, that tornado warning would be extended farther to the east. It's moving at about 40 to 50 miles per hour on its forward motion. Again, strong storm, producing wind, but still on the weakening side of where it once was when we were first seeing the thunderstorms that were really rotating sharply, and that's where we had that couplet. Let me go to a wider view of what's happening across the area. Put the radar back on for a second, and then back to that wider view. As we zoom out to the home view, I'm going to point out the number of warnings that we have. Again, tornado warning is the only one, and that's up in Jennings County, Indiana, set to expire in 14 minutes. We have the severe thunderstorm warning across Jefferson County, Bullitt, a good chunk of Spencer, western parts of Shelby, additional storms trying to develop now across northern Hart County, and a tornado warning approaching Bowling Green outside of the area. Let's go to Ryan Hoke.
All right, Kevin, I'm just off the phone with officials in Jefferson and Bullitt counties. They have no new damage to pass along right now in Jefferson. One of the only spots we know of is literally in front of the Franciscan Kitchen by the station here, having that tree down that we just showed you the live shot from. We'll continue to be in touch with folks down the line here, and as more tornadoes warnings are issued, we will likely be, of course, contacting a lot of folks, getting a lot of damage reports here, Kev.
All right. I see a lot of information coming in from the National Weather Service. They're tracking storms back out to the west of us, where we've been tracking tornadoes that are on the ground. Logan County is one of those. We've had a number of reports of large hail.
These Nickel size in Highview there at the Weather Service.
That's coming down now. So that's a real-time report there. I'll just want to mention the tornado warnings to the north of the viewing area continue. The one over in Jennings County is just about to move into Ripley County. So our focus will then go to areas to our south in Jefferson County, where we have now nickel-size hail being reported. And remember, we said wind and hail would be the main threat with this. It's sort of just a big blob or mess of rain, but it does contain wind and hail. It would be rough to get a tornado out of this sort of mixture that we have on the radar, but the wind and hail certainly a possibility. And we've picked out those pockets of wind in the Hillview area, not far from Tyler Lane. We were pointing out there was some strong push of wind. Sometimes that helps precipitate even the larger hailstones with that, and that's what we've seen up to nickel-size hail coming out of southern Jefferson County.
And that wind spreading north into J-Town, a classic downburst kind of signature here, where it's spreading right in J-Town, the Snyder Freeway heading all the way up, really into Middletown now. And it's likely the end cycle of this burst of wind. So if it knocked any trees down or caused any power outages, it already likely happened in the past, I would say, couple of minutes, as that surge of wind expands all the way in even Fisherville at the moment, Kevin. So that's a classic look to just a straight line downburst wind, but still can cause a lot of problems for us.
Well, you see the tree that's down already. That was not far from the downtown area. So we have already had some trees down, and that's with 30 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts with that. On the bottom part of your screen, the storm tracker working its way through Bullitt County. That's making its way over into Nelson County, just to sort of get a real-time feel of what's happening with the southern edge of this. But again, even here in Louisville, we've got trees down in places. So this is what's happening across Jefferson County. Back to our home view we go. And again, we're bouncing around on the views. Our plan will be, as long as the tornado warning is in place to the north, to stay on the air. And as long as we have wind damage occurring in the metro area, we'll stay on the air. If this storm were to weaken and we go off of the air, we're going to be continuing our coverage on our streaming platforms. Easy to find. If you have the Wave Weather app, you can watch it there. If you have wave3.com, you can watch it there. Roku, Apple TV, you know all of that. that. I just want to make sure you know where we're going to be, because we're not going anywhere. Just a matter of finding us, depending on what's actually happening, will be a little different. It's 78 degrees in Louisville. Winds, last measurement, 37 miles an hour. We go back to the tornado warning storm up in southern Indiana, and this is North Vernon. It's past you. You're in the clear. Butlerville in the clear. We mentioned San Jacinto earlier. Storm's passing over you right now. This is the county line that takes us from Jennings County into Ripley County. And yeah, that storm's still making its way off to the east. The greatest potential for rotation would be near the San Jacinto area. You can see that marked by the reds and greens on the radar, the greens toward the radar, the reds away. And that's where we would have that little couplet or the potential rotation showing up in the storm. And that still has the ability to move across the county line. So for now, the tornado warning continues. It's 8:06, scheduled to end at 8:15. And that's a look at the velocity. When we look at what to expect on the reflectivity, it's heavy rain. There's not a ton of hail with this storm. And if it were to be hail and the heavy rain, it's going to be over into Ripley County, closer to New Marion. That's where we see the darker colors on the reflectivity. All right, now let me go back to the home view just to point out areas in Jefferson County and parts of Carroll County, streaming down into Oldham County, parts of Shelby, Spencer, Bullitt, northern Nelson County, all seeing storms that have the potential for some strong wind and some smaller hail with those storms as well. Down into Hart County, thunderstorms trying to erupt out ahead of that system that's moving into Bowling Green. This has been the longest-lived storm we've been tracking. That came out of Missouri, where they've had, unfortunately, fatalities this afternoon with those storms that passed by St. Louis. There have been a number of tornadoes that have been confirmed on the ground out there. And then even toward Evansville, another cluster of storms making its way on. I'll go over to, well, my computer was freaking out for a minute there. Brian, I'll kick it over to you.
All right, let me show you some of the rotation signatures, Kevin, that we've been tracking. This really gives you an idea of where, at least on the wind damage side, some areas we're watching. Obviously, the one tornado that we've been tracking for a while, look at that signature that has been raking just on the northern side of Hopkinsville. Is not easy a bit, and also a little bit of a turn up to the north where it's cycling, which is pretty wild to see that on the actual signal itself there from the radar. You get into Louisville. Now, this, again, just shows you that storm did have the wind potential with it, but not exactly a tornado. It just produced a burst of wind, likely a downburst scenario. I got a feeling we're going to hear more about some tree damage, though, in parts of Jefferson County, just from that burst that was on the signature of the radar itself. And look at this mess. This is what, Kevin, you've been talking about for a while, especially that one that's been on the ground just on the south side of the IU area in Bloomington. Did a little bit of a cycle here in the last couple of scans, but looks like the next one here is starting to take over into Indiana, and obviously the one to Jackson and Jennings we're watching as well. Ryan, what do you got? Because I know you've been on the phone talking to several folks.
Yeah, and we've, of course, been watching all of your reports coming in via multiple sources here, including MPing. You can see all these little hail reports of pea-sized. New tornado warning just coming out, by the way, at the top of the screen there. And, of course, we've got the hail report, I should say, that's up near Lawrence and Jackson and Jennings County, Indiana. There's North Vernon there with a dime-size hail report. Kevin, we've got that new tornado warning coming out. We'll go straight to you.
Yeah, let's just jump to that. It's the continuation of what we had just a few minutes ago of that storm up in Jennings County. So now continuing into Bartholomew, Brown, and Decatur.
Considerable.
This is observed, so that means it's on the ground, and it is considerable. So this, again, you can see the debris is being picked up by the radar. Let me move that so you can see the hook. We were just watching that, and that's just how fast it can happen. It went from not being as tight of a rotation to now just really hooking around. Again, this is Columbus, Indiana, so this is just a little bit farther north than where we were. Let me get your bearings here. There's North Vernon. That was the storm we were tracking. Again, we've triggered this warning across parts of Bartholomew County. You can see that debris. This is just outside of our viewing area up toward Columbus, Brown County, Shelby County, and then we work our way over into, again, the 8:45 warning. That includes parts of Jennings County. So you can see that sliver on the northern side of the county is why that new tornado warning came out. So the question is, and I'll center it up, is where will this storm go that is now observed? Remember, the one we were watching was the one down near North Vernon. That one was the one that was weakening and not so much. The one Brian was mentioning that looked like it was cycling again, that is as this one. And you can see that sharp hook showing up near Bethany. It's going to move to Columbus. If you've ever been up I-65, you know right where that is, the spanning bridge there. Yes, they are in the line to see this tornado that's on the ground continue to move in that direction. So right up I-65, tornado moving your way, Columbus, Indiana, just north of, this is the county line that takes you down into Jackson County. That's our county, but we're, again, watching this storm because should it, again, linger just a little bit farther south, it could clip northern parts, a very fringe part of Jennings County. So that is the tornado warning that's in place for Jennings County.
And Kevin, they say
Indiana.
that's a cone-shaped tornado visible from the south side of Columbus in that confirmed report from the National Weather Service.
Wow. So we look at the debris. We can see pockets of where we may have some debris not far from Bethany. When we look at the velocity, it's very clear where we have that rotation showing up. You can see the bright reds and the bright greens side by side. That is the tornado that is on the ground. It's passing Bethany, Indiana, moving toward Columbus, should move. It's too early to tell if it will actually hit Columbus or if it will go just south. It's too close to call, but it is a very uncomfortable place to be if you're in Columbus, Indiana. All of that zone should be in your tornado safe place. Sand Creek and extreme northern parts of Jennings County in your tornado safe place as that storm continues to work its way off to the east. And that storm is also moving roughly at about 45 miles per hour as it pushes eastbound. So a serious situation ongoing really just north of the viewing area, but certainly close enough that it could impact parts of extreme northern Jennings County. And let's go over to Brian.
Yeah, Kevin, watching the wind ticking up again. This is a closer view into eastern side here of Bullitt County into Spencer County. This is very close to Highway 44. Here's Highway 44. Here's Taylorsville Lake area. Surge of wind, I would say about 40 to 50 miles per hour being noted on the radar. These showers and storms kind of lined up here across Bullitt County all the way into Spencer, trying to power back up again. You can see those little pockets of wind increasing once again. I know the Weather Service is looking at potentially, if they haven't done it already, issuing another warning that may come out to cover some of this stronger wind that is moving through Spencer County, Bullitt County, eventually into parts of Shelby County. Again, this is nothing too excessive, but it is enough to certainly cause some wind damage. And it's arriving in pockets. As I animate this, you'll be able to see how it'll certainly looks like it's calming down and then suddenly got another surge up in a different area. And that's because the jet itself over our head is really lifting up these clouds in a repeated fashion. So this is a little bit odd in the scenario. Normally, Kevin, we were talking about a rain event and getting rain cold air. There's so much moisture being pulled into our area right now and warmth that's kind of counteracting any kind of rain cold environment we've got. So you can have a downpour and immediately get a severe thunderstorm an hour later.
Yeah, and we're seeing that expand across the area. You note the new severe thunderstorm warning we have. It's just an expansion of what we were watching with those pockets of wind moving through. So that will continue to move off to the east as we track that across parts of Spencer County, Shelby County, now into Franklin County with the latest severe thunderstorm warning that's coming out. We'll go into that storm in just a second, pointing out that the same threat exists with the powerful wind and the hail. We're also getting hail reports coming out of near Mount Washington, not far from where the terminal Doppler radar is located, and that's coming in as dime-size hail, so not far from Mount Washington. Well, we're at 8:14. The tornado warning, the first tornado warning for Jennings County is going to be allowed to expire. The one that includes the very northern sliver will continue. That is the strongest storm on the radar at this point. The storms across Jefferson County, moving through Shelby, Spencer, over into Franklin County, those have wind potential upwards of 50 to 60 miles per hour. They also have the potential to produce some small hail. Bowling Green on standby for an approaching tornado. That is a not confirmed tornado, but it has been at times. That storm is produced very strong winds and large hail as well. That's a large supercell storm that's been on the ground for quite some, or that has been on the radar for quite some time as it continues its movement off to the east. So certainly nothing to sneeze at, should be in your tornado safe place there. Just south of Evansville, new tornado warning coming out. That's going to be rolling on across parts of northern Kentucky over the course of the next little bit as well. Could impact us as it gets into the western part of the viewing area shortly. We're looking at the whole radar. We've got these individual storms that are producing damage in places from wind to hail to tornadoes. The greatest potential for the tornado at this very moment is across the extreme northern part. I'm going to tilt the radar down to include Indianapolis. It's this storm right here, and I'm going to zoom in because we're on the air with tornado warning coverage that includes parts of Jennings County. Why? Well, you can see it there. This is a tornado that is on the ground moving right across Columbus, Indiana. If you've been up either 31 or I-65, you know where Columbus, Indiana is. This is the northern part of our viewing area, including Brewersville, and that is where we have the tornado warning, and that includes northern Jennings County, just north of North Vernon, just north of Hayden, as that storm makes its way off to the east, roughly at about 45 to 50 miles per hour. By far the strongest storm. I'll show you what it looks like on the velocity. It's very easy to pick out why the tornado warning is in place. You can see that tight rotation, and yes, it is moving right through Columbus, Indiana at this point. So you've got to be in your tornado safe place. Technically in the viewing area from Indianapolis, but it is just north of Seymour. So many friends and family. If you have them up in Columbus, give them a call. Let them know what's happening. It may be a little late for Columbus, but down the line, you should be warning those folks that severe weather is approaching. If you're in northern parts of Jennings County, don't let your guard down. While it looks like at this point this may stay just north of you, it's still a little early to tell. Oftentimes when these storms are in an environment of their own, they can start to turn right, and if that were to happen, it would certainly push it into that northern section of Jennings County. So that is the tornado warning that's in place until 8:45. Still about another 30 minutes on that. We go back to the view of the radar, where you can see not only the hook on the radar, but yes, hail and heavy rain falling across parts of the warned area that's moving off to the east. We go back to the home view, just to note that winds in Louisville have been as high as 37 miles an hour. Clusters of storms, some of these severe. We've been tracking the wind and the pockets of wind through Jefferson County, as well as Nelson, Bullitt, Spencer, Shelby, now Franklin County. This little, it's hard to describe because it's not a supercell. It's just a mess of rain and wind and small hail that's moving through that area, likely forming on a boundary that it is completely heavy rain, and it is putting down some pockets of heavy wind. How strong? 50 to 60 mile per hour winds in a few places. Not everywhere and not consistent, but sporadic and certainly damaging for the places that are seeing it. Let's go over to Brian Good with just an update on, again, the general setup of what we're faced with this evening. This is just now beginning, all within the last 40 minutes or so, Brian.
Yeah, exactly. And we're able to track different ways of looking at these storms, whether it's the height of them or whether they have hail, or in this case here, rotation and shear tracking. You can certainly see the one, that's what you're looking at, is the path of some of the strongest of those wind shear markers we had that moved across the IU area. You see where it cycled right there on the edge of Bartholomew County, heading northern side of Jennings County. Here's the one that triggered into Jackson County, into Jennings. Notice the signal is not as strong as what it was a second ago, but still there as it's moving out of our area. Notice the signal, though, for the severe weather into the Louisville Metro and to Taylorsville Lake. Yes, you got markers indicating some wind shear, but the winds have been more straight line wind, downburst type scenarios, and not as strong of a signal. Meanwhile, we get to the south. And here's where we're starting to see the supercell that's moving into Bowling Green. But notice the shear markers that are going up into parts of Edmonson County, Butler County, and Hart County. Now, we're just now starting to see the radar beginning to light up in that area. Let me show you what that looks like. And just now starting to see thunderstorms growing here. So we need to watch that. I think it's relatively elevated at the moment. But in Hart County and Munfordville, if that can root down a bit more, we may have an issue of a severe thunderstorm developing in, say, in southern LaRue, northwest Greene, and eastern Hart. That may be next in line downwind here from this big supercell moving through Bowling Green. So these markers like this, we indicate the wind shear like this, Kevin, can be a good indicator of what's about to happen next as well.
We'll keep a close eye on all of the storms that are ongoing. Promises to be a busy night. Let me explain what you're looking at. Obviously, we've got the radars behind us, but in that box, you saw a lot of police lights. That's where we have a tree down, not far from the Franciscan Kitchen, down near downtown Louisville. So a wind gust, last reported at the airport, was 37 miles per hour. So we have had some damage where wind is taking down some trees. That's in those pockets of wind that Brian's been pointing out. We've also had the storm tracker deployed where we've been down in parts of Bullitt and northern Nelson County, keeping an eye on the skies there. Things have calmed down just a bit in terms of hail. We had nickel-size hail reported and dime-size hail reported near Mount Washington. So again, skies darkening, heavy rain, pockets of wind, small hail. That's what we're getting out of the severe thunderstorm warning that we have. Focused on what's happening to the south, severe thunderstorm warning, and still a tornado warning just off to the west of Bowling Green. And then farther to the north, in the northern fringe of our viewing area, we have a tornado warning that is still in place across extreme northern Jennings County. And this is a tough call because this storm has had a history. This is past Brown County at this point, moving up through Bartholomew County. This is Columbus, Indiana, the core of the rotation passing by. We've got the inflow to the storm, and velocity shows at best. You can see the rotation just passing right over top of Columbus for that most part. That's going to move across 31, US 31, just north of Sand Creek. It'll push toward Clifty. Big push of wind with that as well. So we get the wind on the front side and then the possible rotation that will be making its way off to the east. That's the tornado warning. Why are we on the air? Tornado warning includes a very sliver or fringe part of northern Jennings County. Can't rule out that this will clip that area, so we'll be here to keep you updated on that. That's the warning that we have for the tornadoes. Back to our radar view, back to our home view we go, and you're going to notice with that additional severe thunderstorm warnings, including the metro and points farther to the south and moving over toward the Cincinnati area. You can see the one in Bowling Green now extending with a severe thunderstorm warning. That's just south of Grayson County and just off to the south and west of Hart County. Wouldn't be surprised next in line would be Hart, then Greene, and moving over toward Adair. We're getting funnel cloud reports out of that storm up around Bartholomew County. That's up where Columbus is located. So no longer on the ground, but certainly cause for concern when you have the funnel cloud could touch down at any moment. Those are a rundown of the warnings that we have. Additional thunderstorms are developing, and we will continue to see the development of these thunderstorms as the evening wears on. This will eventually create a solid line of showers and thunderstorms that stretches from Indianapolis through Evansville, Paducah, down into northern parts of Arkansas, and that will be moving in our direction as the night wears on. So if you've been watching through the week, we said there'd be likely for the second round of storms, because this morning we had the round that we expected early at around 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 a.m., right? So that was round one. Round two, we said, would have two components to it. Individual supercells that would probably precede the line of storms. So it's playing out as we expected. It's a little bit later in time than we expected. And the reason for that is because of how long the clouds lingered this afternoon or early this morning into the early afternoon. So everything was off just probably by about 2 to 3 hours. But in the grand scheme of things, the modeling of the data and our forecast is pretty much on track at this point. Brian?
Yeah, we're getting a number report, by the way, of power outages going up. More than 2,000 customers in the Lake Forest area. Long portions of 64 there and the Snyder Freeway. I think that was part of that downburst wind that we were tracking earlier this evening, going back to the radar loop. Had been roughly, I would say, about 7:30 to about 7:50 is when that burst of wind really just raced across eastern Jefferson County. So I think that's the majority of those outages came from that. That is now to the east, but that's still a very strong cluster of storms, roughly around Mount Washington, heading into Taylorsville Lake, all the way into the capital. So still need to watch these because they could easily produce more damaging winds and even some hail. And we don't have any statements yet on Hart County, but this one continues to grow and is showing signs of develop more and more pockets of wind with that. So again, a big heads up. Southern LaRue County, northwest areas of green. You may be next in line of warnings ahead of the bigger supercell that is still producing tornado warnings now, including parts of the Bowling Green area there.
Yeah, they've just reissued that to be a tornado warning for Bowling Green. So you'll see that down to the south. When we focus that way, that is that same supercell has been coming out of Missouri, has had a history of producing on and off damage along its track. If you have family or friends down in Western or in Bowling Green, let them know that that storm is tornado warned at this point. Radar indicated that warning will continue as it moves off to the east, and that one's moving at about 35 to 45 miles per hour as it pushes through Bowling Green down into southern Kentucky. So the only tornado warning in our viewing area happens to be that sliver across northern Jennings County. That will continue with that storm moving likely right along that county line. Boy, that's a close call there for the folks in Jennings County. Additional warnings continue back across western Kentucky and southwest Indiana, where that storm is going to move just south of the Evansville area. We have a number of reports coming in. Union County, Kentucky, reporting a tornado that has touched down from the emergency manager there. That was roughly at about 8:24. So that report just now coming in. So we do have a few reports of real-time tornado information on the ground. That one was out of Union County near Morganfield. So let me zoom out or zoom into the radar. I'm going to go back to the north, just check in on each of these storms, let you know what's sort of the plan would be if you're in this. I think that this storm will go north of Jennings County. So outside of that, I feel pretty confident that as this continues to move, yes, there is rotation still with that storm. There is a funnel cloud with that storm. It's broadened out a little bit, but we're still seeing some decent rotation. Again, very close to the county line, so we cannot rule it out at this point. So that tornado warning holds until 8:45. For the northern part of Jennings County. Let me go just a little bit farther to the south, and you can see they've just updated that no longer to include Jennings County. So as close as it is, Weather Service fairly confident it's going to stay just north. So the good news is the tornado threat in terms of warnings has ended for our viewing area at the moment, but it very well could come back around. Back to the radar view, noting that that is north of Jennings County. All right, that's good news. Let's go back to the home view, pointing out that we have additional severe thunderstorm warnings. One moving away from us towards Cincinnati. The other one now clearing Jefferson County, but moving across parts of Spencer, Shelby, and Franklin County.
That may get expanded a little more into Shelbyville based on the wind here.
Farther to the north.
Yeah, a little bit to the north, yeah.
Now let me just zoom into that. We can spend just a moment talking about that. We'll check in with Ryan here in just a second. I'm going to zoom into that. We've got some pockets of heavy wind or strong wind with this part of the storm. I'll put the velocity on so you can see it. If we go to the velocity area, you're going to see the wind push through. And you can see not far from Olive Branch, that would be a push of wind. Another one over near Harrisonville. So as Brian was mentioning, this is expanding to the north. The warning technically does not go up to Shelbyville. It sort of cuts off right at the top of that push of wind. The idea is that it could get expanded further north. So it includes Shelbyville. Bottom line is strong winds are ongoing across southern Shelby County, along and south of Shelbyville Road and along and south of Interstate 64. Let's check in with Ryan Hoke. He's been on the phone with a lot of police, fire, EMS, emergency managers. What do you have?
Yeah, I've just been off the phone there with Spencer County. They say that they're in pretty good shape, as well as J-Town. Just got off the phone with J-Town Dispatch. They say they don't have any damage reports at this time. We have a few viewers who have sent in some photos from the North Vernon area. You can see the big storm structure just north of North Vernon, Indiana, a little bit earlier. Thanks to Jacob for sending that in. Nickel-size hail from Holly and Joe up there in North Vernon. You can see it there in the grass. And finally, I wanted to go over some of the power outages. We know we've got about 2,100 folks without power here in Jefferson County right now. Many of those a little closer to like Lake Forest and eastern Jefferson County near the Snipe all-nighter. We don't want to forget about our friends up in Jennings County. 4% of Jennings County is without power. That equates to about 659 customers. If you go to Jackson County here, the Seymour area, there you go, almost 2% without power. That's about 495 folks. If we go over to Lawrence County, that's Bedford, that's Mitchell. They have about 2,343 folks without power. So a somewhat significant power outage there in Lawrence County, Indiana. Avoca, Bedford, Mitchell, Mono, Spice Valley, Guthrie. Pretty decent power outage because of those storms that raked through the US 50 corridor there just a little bit ago, guys. So those power outage numbers will continue to increase a bit as the data catches up to what's going on now.
All right, our plan is going to be to go back to NBC shortly here. I want to recap what's going on. I'll go over to Brian here in just a second as well. But the fact is there are no tornado warnings in place across the viewing area. And the severe thunderstorm warnings we can cover on our stream. And all of those are moving away from the metro. And while we do have some strong storms with wind pushing through parts of Shelby and eventually into Franklin County and additional development going on to the south, we're going to continue to watch the storms, and we will continue tracking them live on our digital assets, and that's all of our apps and online. So if you have the ability to watch and you're interested in weather information, we want to be able to give that to you. But if you're interested in catching up with your programs on NBC, we're going to let you watch those unless there's additional tornado warnings or impressive severe thunderstorm warnings that come on that we need to interrupt for. Before we jump to that, let me go to Brian just to make sure he has anything else to add. Okay. And then we'll wrap it up for a temporary amount of time, I have a feeling.
Yeah, temporary indeed. Yeah, 2 pockets of wind right now I'm looking at. We've been talking about the one in Shelby County, getting right on the edge of the severe thunderstorm warning. It may be just below severe limits, but it's close enough that certainly it can knock over some limbs. Again, we've had some heavy rain this morning, so the ground's very saturated. So it doesn't take as much of a strong wind to cause wind damage in this kind of scenario. The other pocket of wind just out of E-Town, heading toward the Boston area as you move into Nelson County, that has already been measured at 50 miles per hour. In fact, I'll show you what the Skytrack looks like there as you move into E-Town, which is kind of a spooky looking shot. This is looking to the northeast. It says Bloomington. Yeah, sorry about that. But that's actually in E-Town we're looking at, where you can see the thunderstorms in the distance. And again, winds right now roughly at about 50 miles per hour in that area. So just pockets of wind we'll be watching, Kevin, but I got a feeling when those cells back to the west, they begin to approach the areas we into this evening, that's where things will begin to ramp up once again.
All right. Appreciate that analysis there, Brian. When we were watching, you see the police lights. If you're just joining us, that's where we had some down trees here in Louisville. We had winds up to near 40 miles an hour measured. Some areas could have been slightly higher than that. You can see the storm tracker is out and about. Logan Perone's on board that. We'll be watching the weather. We're going to continue with nonstop weather coverage on Wave Weather Now. You can find that by logging on to wave3.com or on the Wave or Wave News app, Wave Weather app, or the Wave News app. Scroll down, click Watch Now. We'll get you to NBC for a period of time. We'll jump back in as needed. For all of the Wave Storm Tracking team, I'm Kevin Harned. Oh, we just